This is Learning with Coach History. Hey everyone, this is the second of 4 lessons in imperialism. Today is the Spanish American War. In this lesson, you'll learn how the United States became involved in Cuba and fought a war with Spain. The key terms and people in this unit: Jose Marte, Valeriano Weyler, Yellow Journalism, USS Maine, George Dewey, Rough Riders, San Juan Hill, and the Treaty of Paris. Between 1868 and 1878, Cubans fought their first war for independence from Spain. The rebels did not win, but they did force Spain to abolish slavery in 1886. After that, United States capitalists invested in sugarcane plantations in Cuba. Sugar was the most important product of Cuba. The U.S. was the main market for this sugar. As long as the U.S. did not charge a tariff on Cuban sugar, the Cuban economy thrived. But the Cuban economy collapsed in 1894 when a tariff on sugar was imposed. In 1895, Cubans began a second war for independence. The rebellion was led by Jose Marte, who was a Cuban poet and journalist who had been living in exile in New York. Marte organized a campaign of destroying property, especially American-owned sugar plantations, as a way of provoking the U.S. to action. The rebels wanted the United States to join their cause. American opinion was mixed. Some wanted to support Spain in order to keep their investments safe. Others wanted to help Cuban people win their freedom from Spain, just as the U.S. had won its independence from England. In 1896, Spain sent an army to Cuba to restore order. The army was led by General Valeriano Weyler. Weyler rounded up the entire rural population of central and western Cuba. He kept 300,000 people as prisoners in concentration camps. That way they could not help the rebels. Thousands died of hunger and disease. This story was widely reported in the United States. Rival newspapers in New York made the terrible events sound even worse. They exaggerated the brutality of the story in order to attract readers. This sensational stories became known as yellow journalism, reporting that exaggerates the news in order to make it more exciting. William McKinley became president in 1897. At that time, many Americans wanted the United States to help the rebels against Spain. McKinley tried to find a peaceful solution to this crisis. His efforts had several positive results. Spain sent General Weyler home, changed the concentration camp policy, and gave Cuba limited self-government. Then two events made Americans very angry at Spain. The first was the publication of a letter that insulted the American president. The Delhome letter was written by a Spanish diplomat. It criticized McKinley for being weak. Although some Americans agreed that the president was weak, they did not want to hear this criticism from a Spanish official. Only a few days after the letter was published, something worse happened. The battleship USS Maine was stationed in Cuba to protect American lives and property. On February 15, 1898, the ship exploded. The ship sank and 260 officers and crew on board died. The cause of the explosion was not known. However, newspapers blamed Spain and Americans cried for war. On May 1, 1898, the American naval commander George Dewey sailed into Manila Bay in the Philippines. His ships destroyed the Spanish fleet there. In the next 2 months, U.S. soldiers fought on the side of the Filipino rebels. The Spanish surrendered to the United States in August. In Cuba, the American Navy blocked off the harbor of Santiago de Cuba. Spanish ships could not leave. Then American troops landed on the island in June of 1898. One unit of volunteer soldiers was called the Rough Riders. Theodore Roosevelt was one of their leaders. They helped win the important Battle of San Juan Hill. American newspapers made Roosevelt a hero. When the Spanish ships tried to leave the harbor, their fleet was destroyed. This led the Spanish to surrender on July 25th. Spain quickly agreed to a peace treaty. The Treaty of Paris granted Cuba its independence. Spain gave Puerto Rico and the Pacific islands of Guam to the United States. The United States paid Spain $20 million for the annexation of the Philippine Islands. The Treaty of Paris touched off a great debate in the United States about imperialism. President McKinley was in favor of it, but some prominent Americans presented a variety of arguments against annexation. Booker T. Washington argued that the United States should settle race relations at home before taking on social problems elsewhere. Labor leader Samuel Gompers opposed the treaty because he believed Filipino workers would compete for American jobs. The Senate approved the treaty on February 6, 1899.